out was these highly engaging posts, when we look at what people were writing about, it was definitely something that appealed to a very broad audience. Very broad audience. Here's a little screenshot of a post. It was a survey that went up. I think in this case it was on Yammer, and it's assuming we would end splitting up time between working from home, what it would look like. And this whole thing about flexible work, returning to the office, is something that everyone is interested in. So a topic that's got broad appeal, is something that a lot of people can comment on and have an opinion about, is something that's also really, really relevant. So for myself, if I write about a really like a niche topic, or it's a very complex thing, I probably shouldn't expect that it's something that's going to be highly engaging. So it's just something to bear in mind. The broader, the more general interest it has, the easier it is for people to engage with it. Then the when. The other thing we saw was there were some posts that you can just see that it was the timing that mattered. It could be, for instance, around, I don't know, particular an event that happens once a year. I was about to say, about Christmas time, or there's another festive season. The example here from David McLean, for his particular company, they were having this 2020 annual Legends trip that was going to be happening in November. And the CEO here had traveled to this secret location where the event was going to be held and said to everyone, guess where I am? Try and guess it in the comments below, because this is where our event will be, later this year. So because it was leading up to a particular event, the timing was really relevant here. So the when is really important. And there's some great examples from Ryan about how they've utilized that within Nestle. As I said, some normal people like myself and Jeff, we don't necessarily have, might not have the sort of, the authority to, the role or seniority. So we got to think about combining some of these things. We're going to think about having a topic that has really broad interest, or really think about the timing. If I write and say Merry Christmas in February, it's not going to be the right timing. So really think about doing something that's broad and then timing it, and even coming down to the time of day, which I think Ryan's going to cover a bit about as well. Otherwise, I'll certainly also pick it up towards the end. So just a little introduction to this particular topic, and then the last bit I might mention is about the how. When we are writing things, and I think that'll come through some of the examples that Ryan is going to show you. The how we are engaging online, the way that we are writing, that authentic tone was another thing that really popped up when you see the examples. And for those of you that are in corporate comms, I'm sort of sad to say that people can really detect if something has been written by corporate comms. I think one of our customers in Australia said that you can smell it from a mile away, if it's written by corporate comms. So these really highly engaging posts, where you can just, when you see them, you can just see this is written by a real person. The tone, the content is authentic. The research that we've done shows that when you ask questions, you can actually get about 150% more replies than when you don't ask a question. And also mentioning people can be really effective. Something about 73% more replies when you mention someone in the post. And as we know, I'm sure that you are familiar with the fact that when you use kind of imagery, that can also lead to more engagement, not just likes, but actually also comments. So when people see something that sort of stimulates the eye, using whether it's video, it's probably even more engaging, but also pictures can be really, really engaging. We've actually also looked at content, and interestingly enough, if you write something that's too short, it's not going to work. If it's way too long, it's not going to work either. And there seems to be this sort of ideal space, which is quite wide, between the 500 and 2,000 character, where you get the most replies and likes. So I hope that was a good setup for you, Ryan, to give us some examples of what's happening over in Nestle. And might just pause there and just see if anything has come up in the chat you want to talk about. You're welcome at any point in time to just fire away and ask questions in there. Make comments about anything you hear from either from myself or from Ryan. We might pick it up here in the session today, but otherwise you feel free to have this as a parallel discussion area alongside the presentation. So Ryan, you still there?
Yep, I'm here.
I'm gonna head over to you.
Excellent. All righty. Thanks so much, Kai, for the introduction, and really great to see such a great turnout today as well. So great to see so many happy faces. So let me just share my screen. I'm going to go into the same mode that you were in, Kai. Hopefully it will work nice and smooth. Let me know when you can see my screen.
You're good. We can see it.
There we go. Let me open up. Wonderful. Okay. Is that good? Can you see, Jeff?
Yep, it's good.
Excellent. Okay, so let's get straight into it then. In case you're wondering who I am, my name is Ryan Wade. I'm part of what's known as the Adoption and Change team here at Nestle. I'm based in the Barcelona digital hub, but we work on a global level. So really, if you ask what our responsibility is, it's to boost adoption of a bunch of different software tools, SWOOP included, around the company. So that's what I do. I'm part of that team. And obviously, I'm here to talk to you a little bit about creating great posts, because boosting adoption is not possible, of course, without good communication. So let's get straight into it. We have defined what we consider to be two key pillars of great communication. Okay, so the first one here is be vibrant and be unmissable. Okay, and this is not just specific to Yammer. It's not specific to workplace. This is also relevant in mainstream social media as well, right? The digital age has really sparked this battle for attention. So being very conscious of the fact that you have a millisecond and a very short span of time to be able to capture that end user's eyeballs really with your content. So that's a really important element of any communication plan. Be conscious of the end user. Be conscious that you really have a small amount of time to be able to capture their attention. What does that mean? It means that we're trying to push for less large blocks of text in our workplace post, and of course, a larger amount of visually beautiful content. That does mean that if you're like me, I'm not necessarily a Photoshop expert. I'm not a graphic designer, but I am finding myself putting together more and more visual content as well as the weeks go by. So I'm sure a lot of you on the call will be feeling pushed in that direction. And we have some tips later on as well to help you to create that visual content. And finally here, it's just about quickly getting to the point, okay? So again, we talked about removing large blocks of text and really thinking about the end user and thinking, okay, what is going to drive my end user to take the desired action that I want them to do? So what is it that motivates them? What makes them tick? And what's going to stand out to them as part of our messaging? So that's pillar number one. Pillar number two is less around the actual tailoring of your content and more around knowing your audience. Okay, so understanding your receivers. We call them receivers at Nestle. I don't know if that's just a Nestle thing or if you do that at your companies as well. But understanding your end users really unlocks the potential of your communications. Okay, what that means is if you are, for example, posting in a general workplace group or kind of a top-down communication within Yammer, for example, that's fine. You might keep it nice and general, but there's also an opportunity there when you tailor that message to more specific communities. Okay, so I might have a tech tip for Microsoft Teams that is actually really relevant for salespeople who are on the move. So what might I do? I might take that general message, tailor it in a way that I know is going to resonate with salespeople and put it into a smaller sales group as well. Okay. And that's pretty much the point of this second pillar, remaining laser focused on the benefit to the end user. Okay, so that's super important, is to understand your end user. Profiling your audience is super important here as well. Take time with your colleagues to go through and really kind of create kind of fake profiles of your end users. Understand what drives each persona that you come up with. Take into account things like digital dexterity as well. So what level of digital sophistication they have, and when you put yourself in their shoes, you can really tailor your communications around that too. Okay. Alrighty, so those are the two pillars that we clearly define at Nestle, at least, and they both contribute to the kind of must-haves of your comms efforts. Okay, so what we define as the must-haves of your comms efforts are setting your objectives and KPIs in advance. Of course, when we're talking about KPIs, SWOOP comes in very handy. You might want to set yourself the objectives of things like, okay, we want to have at least 10 shares on this post, or we want to have at least X number of likes or reactions on this post. Those are the kinds of things you might want to look into. You might not be more specific and say, I want to look into reaching frontline workers or reaching a specific department. Again, Swoop can come in and help you to measure that. But it's worth setting up those objectives in advance. If you're wondering, how can I come up with these objectives? If you're wondering what good looks like or what success looks like, I would recommend looking at similar campaigns. They don't have to be yours, but look at other campaigns around your companies, and you can start to measure success or benchmark success based on their levels of engagement, and you can start to set your KPIs around that too. Ensuring content is visually appealing, we've talked about that. That speaks for itself. Identifying champions, Kai mentioned it, brilliant point earlier, that you need to know who has the most weight in your community, who's going to really get that point out there and really amplify your message. Including a call to action in your points as well. So really making sure that in your post, there's a clear call to action and that the user knows what they should do immediately. I used to work in digital marketing, and it's amazing. It seems such a simple point, and it's something that's so often overlooked, which is simply asking users to take an action. Sometimes we're not direct enough with that, right? So if you want a user to go and sign up to an event, just ask them directly to do it there. And a lot of people actually forget that. Definitely worth just remembering that before you go out and create your post. And then, of course, measuring your success. We're closing the loop on the first point that we had here about setting your objectives, measuring your success using a tool like Swoop, and note down those learnings. Very often I see people that measure their success and they say, okay, these were the levels of engagement we had for our posts or for our campaign, but nothing really happens with it from there. Create a space where you can actually note down those learnings, and then when you come to do your next campaign, refer back to those so that you've got them to hand. Okay. All right, without further ado, we've lined up 3 examples of posts, all chosen for different reasons, and I'll explain why now. Okay, so the first example that we'd like to look at is the post that we did for International Women's Day. Okay, so this was a campaign on International Women's Day where we used the hashtag #ChooseToChallenge. Okay, now what happened was we created this template, as you can see at the bottom left here. You can see the kind of pinkish template where we encourage people to use a selfie photo to be part of this challenge, and then the body of the text would actually be their commitment to how they're going to choose the challenge. Okay. Now, what do I love about this? Well, I love that the pink frame that we provided actually made this become a very, very easily recognizable campaign. So when people were scrolling through Workplace, this was so eye-catching, and it was so obvious to the eye in your newsfeed, for example, where somebody was actually taking part in this campaign. And then what we have here in this post on the left-hand side is really some key elements that are, you might see them as the basics of creating a good post, but they are things that sometimes get overlooked. So what you can see, first of all, with the heading, we don't have things like emojis and visually eye-catching things here, but what we do have at least is the use of the heading format within Workplace. So there is a clear flow to the post itself. We start with a heading, and then as you can see, as we get through to the bottom, there is a call to action where you have the bold question. So how are you choosing to challenge? And then at the bottom again, we have those hashtags which are there for tracking within Swoop as well. Okay. We posted this in one of our largest global groups. This was Beatrice, who is head of our group HR and global business services. So what we were able to do was go into Swoop, look at that group, look at who are the top influential people for that group, and say, okay, this is a short list of people that could be a great people to launch the campaign. Okay. Further to that, we were able to say this is the best person for this to launch the campaign, but we were also able to say this was the best time. So we were looking at the time of day when people were most active in that group, and we try and post a little bit before that. Okay. Just as Swoop notes, it's worth looking at the things like the number of posts and the number of replies. Look at the reply times and the post times within Swoop, because those are the ones that have timestamps. That's really, really useful information to look at. Okay, and the other thing I would say as well is that obviously today we're here to talk about how the specifics of how to write a great post. But in actual fact, great campaigns don't happen by accident. You can create the perfect post, but if you haven't done the groundwork in advance, you might find that you struggle. Okay, so what I would say is that this post ticks a lot of boxes for me in terms of the basics of a great post. But what I would say is that there was also a hell of a lot of groundwork that went on behind the scenes beforehand. We talked about this campaign in live events well in advance of the start date as well. So use every opportunity you can. If you send out newsletters, if you have live events where you're going to be talking, or live webinars where you're going to be talking about upcoming campaigns, mention it and think about all of those opportunities to plug your campaign. Okay. why are we happy with this? Well, we typically see very strong engagement between IT and comms. What this showed us, though, and thanks to SWOOP, we were able to jump in and see that we went far beyond that. Okay, as you can see from these, the thicker lines here, you can see that we connected to supply chain, general management, sales and marketing, human resources, and a bunch of other departments as well. So that was particularly pleasing for us. Okay. I do recommend jumping into that cross-team collaboration element of SWOOP if you're using SWOOP already to have a look at that. Okay. Also worth mentioning that when we talk about leveraging influential individuals, our top post from our CEO, Mark Schneider, actually received over 15,000 views as well. So that was a very pleasing number of views to receive. Okay. Number 2, and this goes back to Kai's point around timing. We had a post last year around which was a message to frontline workers. And as you can see on the left-hand side here, we had a post from Chris Johnson, who is the CEO of our AOA zone, so a very senior figure at Nestle. But you might be surprised that actually Chris just kind of picked up the phone, recorded a video using his front camera, and it had a very informal feel to it, right? And even the messaging itself in the post, you can when you read through the text, it actually has quite an authentic tone. It feels as if Chris has written that himself, right? So the authenticity of this post is something that I found particularly pleasing. Kai's point earlier about timing, this was in April 2020, so this was when things were really becoming quite severe with COVID in the region. So again, it was a very topical and a very opportune moment to start talking about this. But this message from Chris was really around thanking our frontline superheroes. So as a food and beverage company, Nestle is considered to be an essential business, essential company. So the factories stayed open throughout the whole COVID pandemic. So of course it's important to keep morale up, and actually what this post did, and I think really the informality of the post lended itself to this. In actual fact, we created a platform for people to actually directly reach people on the front line. And if you're wanting to see an example of what I'm talking about here, we can just take a quick look in the comments. So
some connection issues. Kai?
Did we just lose Ryan?
He is no longer in the meeting, so
I'm sure he is something probably went terribly wrong with his laptop and it's rebooting. I can imagine. Can you imagine the stress now with Ryan at the moment? And I'm going like, So let's all send some wonderful warm thoughts to Ryan, as I'm sure he's panicking around, trying to restart his computer and find out what went wrong.
We must be agile.
We must be agile, and I think we've all been there, haven't we? Tea time. That's a good question. I am wondering whether I should, while we wait for Ryan to go, you never know how long time it takes to reboot a computer. So why don't I fill the waiting time and just show you how we can measure some of these things in SWOOP. So I'll just take back the controls for a moment while we get Ryan back. And then show you this. So let me get this one up and running and get this into presentation mode. All right. So one of the things then, if you think about, well, how can we sort of not just measure these great posts, but how can we learn about what really works well? One of the things that those of you that are familiar with both Yammer and Workplace will see that it's actually really hard from the built-in analytics to quickly find out what are some of those most engaging posts. You sort of got to go hunting for it. So what we've done in SWOOP, we've made it really, really simple for you to go in and find out what are the most engaging posts across the whole Yammer or Workplace instance. So, and you see a screenshot here of what we call most engaging posts. And they're simply ordered by the number of replies and likes and how many people have been involved in those conversations. Now, for companies like many of you that are on the call today are representing, a range of different company sizes. So if you see a most engaging post with several people, if it's 70 people, it's probably way smaller than the number of people that work in your organization. So this is just a demo screenshot. The key thing though here is to have a look at that and say, well, like, what is that? Some of those top posts, you know, what was it that was, who posted that? And see if you can sort of within your own organization can uncover some of those secrets to, well, who were they? What were they writing about? So you start to build up your own sort of intelligence and insights into what make these posts really engaging for your own network. And as Jeff has told me, one of the things that he's been really smart about doing in his previous career is to also look at some of those things that may not have been performing as well as we thought. So if we have sort of an expectation that we will get a certain amount of replies and likes and people engaging with that particular piece of content, we can start to look and say, well, how can we then promote that? You know, how come this worked last time doesn't seem to work this time? You know, who was posting it and so forth. So this becomes a really easy thing to go in and find out where those conversations are happening. The other thing is we just know that tools like Yammer and Workplace are just really awesome at creating conversation. And as I mentioned previously, posts that spark conversation that includes a meaningful question. And Anna, I know you're in the call, and I saw one of your chat messages earlier about saying, well, you know, just don't overdo this thing with questions. And that's absolutely true. So you've got to be careful or really think about when is it a good time to engage people through asking questions. But they do get a lot of engagement if they are sincere and good questions that people can actually respond to. And we can measure that. You can actually go in even down and look at yourself within SWOOP and say, well, when I ask a question, what is the impact it has? And the screenshot you can see here is a metric we call the curiosity index. And you can see that, you know, if I include a question, I get 1.8 replies, but when I don't, it drops to 0.5. So we think that the analytics needs to help us become better at communicating and better at collaborating. So if you find, for instance, that it has no impact whether you're asking a question or not, it could be maybe what Anna was alluding to, that maybe you're overdoing it and maybe you need to sort of, or maybe think about the kind of questions that you ask and ensure they're not these clickbait type questions. The same with mentioning people. It's a very powerful way of getting people into conversations as long as you don't overdo it. So be very conscious about when you are mentioning people and to draw them into a conversation and make that meaningful. And you'll see that you get more engagement on your post when you are mentioning people. So these are two good ways, both curiosity and mention index, to sort of gauge and learn from what you're doing to have better conversations. The last one I'm showing you here is about having two-way relationships, and you know, in large companies where the reality is that most people really don't know each other, these online platforms has a special ability to create this connectedness between people. And these two-way relationships really shows us how much, I guess, implicit trust we have in those conversations. Because if my colleague Jeff posts something and I reply, that's good. But what if Jeff posts something and I don't reply to him? So you have lots of these two-way relationships when we can both start a conversation and we can both engage with it. And that's really what we're trying to seek with this. You know, the higher these level of two-way relationships, the more implicit trust we build in the network. So that's a good way to check this in SWOOP. And then I wanted to show you something about something we found can work for some organizations in particular contexts. And that is as long as senior leaders have bought into using, whether it's Workplace or Yammer, as a social platform to communicate and engage with staff, when they bought into that vision, what they really like is the ability to see how well they're progressing. Senior leaders are typically quite competitive, they're very smart, and they love numbers. So the more numbers we can give them, as long as they have, if they've opted in and they're happy for us to show these numbers, but if we can show them how well they're doing, and comparing them with each other and showing them what they're really good at, what they can start working on, we've seen a tremendous change happening. And getting these senior leaders that might be a little bit shy in posting. You saw the examples from Ryan here with Chris Johnson, who's an area CEO. Like when he does that, it'll inspire his peers to do the same. So it's about finding those senior leaders that are actually doing it well. And when I say doing well, it's not just about posting, isn't it? It's a posting, but there's also the aspect of replying and liking for you to be truly active and interacting with people on Yammer and Workplace. So this little table that I'm showing you here actually pulls together a list of senior leaders for an example organization, and you can see the people at the top are really good at posting. They're good at replying. You can see that's made up into making replies and receiving replies, and same with likes and so forth. And we can see that some of them are good at asking questions. They are good at mentioning and so forth. But as we go further down the list, we can also see that there's some that obviously need more help. Some of them might feel uncomfortable getting that phone out their pocket like Chris, the CEO, did, and said, I'm just going to report this update and sit it out there. They might need some coaching. And for those of you that are in an internal commerce role, I think we have a great opportunity to help them, to take away any friction points, to get the app installed on the phone or whatever it takes to help them feel comfortable and make it easy to participate. So it's this combination of having the numbers, which is like the Fitbit, and we can measure how many steps we walked away. But let's also make it easy for them to start exercising, in this case, by participating on Yammer and Workplace. And the numbers is really what's going to help us get there. And we often hear from customers that when you have this data available, it gives people so much more, sense of confidence in that when you go in and say, well, this is what I think we should be doing because we have the numbers to back it up. So another great report to check in SWOOP are so who are those people? We call them the most influential people. Again, depending on cultural, jurisdictional requirements, we can either show these influential people or they can be hidden. It all depends on negotiations in Germany, for instance, with workers' councils and so forth. But when organizations say, yes, we are happy to show these influential people, then it's a great opportunity to then start using them, saying, well, we can see that there are people here that are really getting a lot of traction. So you can also use them to your benefit. So if you want to create a highly engaging post and there's someone who's got a great following, well, maybe learn from them and see what are they doing, how are they writing, what have they done, and be inspired by that. So that is just for me now, and I'm just going to ask Jeff whether we managed to get Ryan back.
Yes,
alive.
I am alive. I'm
alive.
I'm back.
Brilliant, excellent, Ryan. So
Yes.
I've been sort of entertaining the crowd while I'm sure you were desperately trying to restart the computer. So and we so rudely interrupted you or you were rudely interrupted in your slide. So yeah, no tea time. Sorry, Laura. But I'll hand over back to you, trying to finish up a bit about these fantastic posts.
Yep, absolutely. Let me just share my screen again. I noticed one of the comments was that communicators have to be agile, and that is very true. And I'll be very agile in throwing my laptop out of the window after this. Don't you worry about that. Let me share my screen then. Here we go. Oh, thank you for the welcome back, by the way, as well. Okay, so as we were saying, one of the really pleasing elements was that we were able to give a platform to people to directly reach out to frontline workers. Okay, so this example of Chris's post actually gave people the opportunity to go in and actually tag people that they know work on the front line as well. So big thumbs up to all our frontline heroes. Your dedication inspires us. That's the kind of connection and community feel we want to create around the company as well. So I think that typically a user base would be less inclined to reply in that manner if this was a more formal post. We also see in terms of that kind of willingness to reply to posts, smaller communities, or if you're posting smaller groups, you see greater engagement as well. So if you have a smaller community, people are less fearful to actually get involved in the conversation and to reply to the conversation too. In larger groups, if you have kind of top-down comms, there may be a little bit more hesitation in terms of getting involved in the communication there. Okay. And the final example of the three that we've picked was a new logo challenge. So this time, this wasn't a senior leader who posted this, but it was somebody in our global internal comms team. And what was really smart around the way around this post, the way that this post was drafted, was that they really considered the workplace algorithm when coming up with this post. So if you consider the way that content actually reaches you, a lot of the time people will refer to the newsfeed. And when you look at workplaces help center guides on how different items appear in that newsfeed, it's often because you're following somebody or you're following a group in particular. So of course, if you create a mechanism where people have to engage in content in a certain way, so in this case we said, what's the name of our new logo color? And people could reply to that by reacting in different ways. That really boosts our chances of that content appearing in your newsfeed. Okay.
Ryan, just as you go along there, we have some questions in the chat about frontline workers and how they access and participate. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's our biggest challenge, I think, at Nestle really is connecting with those frontline workers. A lot of the time, it can just be due to devices. So not all of our frontline workers are connected. They don't all have mobile phones, for example. So you may just have this kind of hardware challenge, which frankly we can't overcome. That's maybe just a step too far. But what we do have is that sometimes they will have specific groups set up. So if you're working in a particular factory, there'll be a factory group. I can give you one example. We have so we had a factory in Italy, and one of the things they used to do in the factory was have this kind of a memo board or a note board where they would gather around in person and see the updates of the factory. Of course, with COVID regulations in place, that was not possible. So that was an opportunity for Workplace to step in and say, okay, we're going to create this group and we're going to create a space for all those updates to actually happen. So where possible, we kind of give people the platform to build those communities and share updates that way. And I think that's a really good way of thinking as well, by the way, is looking at all opportunities to digitalize your processes. Okay, so if there's something that always takes place on paper or there's kind of a manual process involved, areas like Workplace and Yammer can also take over in that space. Was there anything else in there, Kai?
I think there was Carla. You were asking whether they are factory workers. Did that answer your question from Ryan?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, brilliant.
Awesome. Okay. All righty. So I can just when I talked earlier about groundwork as well, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes in terms of getting our leaders to be connected, getting them to be great digital leaders, and that doesn't happen by accident as well. So we have a program that I wanted to share a little bit about what we do there and why it could be useful for your enterprise as well. And it's essentially the Connected Leaders program at Nestle has two key elements, right? One is enabling our leaders. So that might be giving them the technical skills that they need to be able to actually lead online and really get their message across online. That might be simply how to activate your Workplace account, how to collaborate on Teams, all of that kind of stuff. But there's a second element, which is building coaches. Okay, so not all of our leaders, but the large majority actually have corp comms people who work with them, so they might be assigned to a specific leader. And of course, those corp comms people or business partners, as we might refer to them, they are essentially coaches for us. So our adoption and change team might want to build a relationship with those people to make sure that they really echo our messaging. So we might say, okay, we're responsible for boosting the adoption of Teams, for example, and it's up to the coaches to really ensure transmit your message to the leaders in their language. Okay, what that allows you to do is then have a kind of a two-pronged approach in terms of you're giving your leaders the technical ability to be a great digital leader, but also you've got a coach who's there to support them along the way. Okay, and that's great because, of course, along that process, they're going to be creating better content and engaging the workforce, which ultimately helps you to achieve a number of goals. And if you look on the left-hand side here, where we take a deep dive into the aims, a few of the ones that we look at Nestle are, of course, faster decision making. So by creating great communication and great posts, we can have insights directly from the front line all the way back to the head office. We can foster innovation. So anybody at Nestle can reply to a workplace post, for example, and provide an idea. You might want to have a challenge where you say, hey, what do you think about the branding of this product? Or have you got any ideas for the naming of this product? People can then get back to you via the comment section. And of course, you can engage employees. So good communication can actually engage your employees and boost morale, which in turn also boosts retention. Okay, so definitely have a think about the way that you work with your leaders as well. Obviously, I'm talking very much in a kind of a large enterprise language. If you're working in a smaller company, you may have direct access to your C-suite, which is obviously a great opportunity for you to run these sessions and to kind of share the value of digital communication.
It might be worthwhile just pausing here for a moment and just asking people here on the call today. What are you finding in terms of engaging senior leaders? Is it challenging? Is it easy? What are some of the learnings that you have? Because there's no doubt in my mind that it's a powerful accelerator, and they validate. When you see them online, it validates the use of the platform. So I'm sort of keen to hear from you what sort of experiences you have with doing something like what Ryan is talking about here in your organizations. Is anyone willing to share some thoughts about what they've done? You're welcome to do it in the chat, and if you just want to pause and think about it, more than welcome to the comments in the chat, and we can sort of follow up with you along the way. But I thought if anyone has something immediate to share, or at least give you the opportunity.
May I share something?
Absolutely.
Hi, it's Carla. I'm with Siemens Energy Canada, based outside of Toronto, and we're just about to embark on a program of training our management team on how to Yammer. I have my first pilot session tomorrow with the Canadian managers, and I'm super interested in this standout function, but that's a whole other conversation. So we've divided our globe into 7 regions. We've identified a regional ambassador who is a member of the corporate comms team in each of those 7 regions. We've empowered the regional ambassadors to lead the training in their region, and we are providing them with the materials that they need, including an invitation letter from the managing director in their country, a pre-survey to get a sense of how the managers are using Yammer now, and then they would do the training, and then there is a post-survey to see if we've moved the dial on how the leaders are using Yammer and how we can assess in corporate comms if we've been successful with this training program.
Excellent.
Just excellent. And you were launching that. When was it you were launching that, Carla?
I have a pilot session tomorrow, actually, here in Canada, and the team will refine the training materials based on the feedback from the managers in the pilot, and then we plan to start rolling it out beginning of July. Not great timing, we know, with summer vacations coming up. However, we've been a long time developing materials, and we really want to start getting it out. So we anticipate that we'll be doing this training over the next 6 months. We have approximately, I believe it's 11,000 managers in Siemens Energy.
Wow, I think there's probably a collective wow and good luck, and we wish we could hear
Good luck, yes.
how it goes.
Thank you. This is a great session. I'll mute myself now.
Thank you. Maybe Ryan, maybe you continue a bit, and also just want to let you know that while we're sort of formally wrapping up sort of on the hour, I hope Ryan and certainly I and Jeff are more than happy to stay and sort of hang around. So for those of you that are keen to have a more informal chat as we stop the recording, then you're more than welcome to stay.
So just some pre-flight checks and some top tips from us. A quick example, if you want to share an example with your team of the importance of creating visual content, you can see a couple of examples here. On the left, just a large block of text, no clear call to action, no hashtags for searchability. It's basically everything we don't want to see in Workplace. And on the right-hand side, you can see that we've actually created a much more engaging post that's clearly formatted. It has emojis to capture your attention, and there's also a clear call to action as well. On the note around creating visual content earlier, I recommend if you're struggling to create content or you're maybe not a graphic designer, kind of the similar situation to the one that I'm in, I use a tool very frequently called Canva. There's a free version available, and it can really turn you into a kind of graphic designer light without being an expert. So I definitely recommend checking in there. If you kind of lack the resource, if you don't have graphic designers on hand to create your posts for you. Okay.
Ryan, maybe just a question here for you. I can see that you got your the photo of yourself, and this is being posted in your name. Oftentimes, people ask, should posts be made by individuals, or is it okay to come from the Nestle corporate communications account? So it's a role-based account. What's your experience in terms of doing it as a personal versus a system or generic role-based account?
Yeah, I am a big believer in individuality with this. So I think, and that goes, I think, across the board with digital marketing as well. If you look at kind of email marketing these days, you'll get a lot of emails from real names. You know, when you go into your inbox, you'll see a message from John Smith, and it kind of grabs your attention more than maybe a company name. And I think that goes for Workplace and even Yammer as well. So I'm a big fan of individuality, and I'm a big fan of also tagging people as well. So you can obviously have Ryan Wade posting this, but I might be Ryan Wade with a bunch of other people who were also part of that project. So obviously that's a great way as well of bringing other people in. So you might want to tag your leaders or anybody else who is influential, and they could perhaps share that post as well. That they will see a message, oh, Ryan tagged me here, maybe that's interesting for me to share, and then they'll go and share it on your behalf as well. So that's my view. I don't know what the people on the call think as well. Feel free to leave your point of view in the chat as well. Did you have any other questions on that, Kai?
Nope. Nope.
No? Alrighty. So our second kind of takeaway for you is what questions to ask yourself when you're drafting your posts. So go through these 5 W's, and there's a cheeky H at the bottom as well. So who, what, when, where, and why. Who is the communication for? So if you're talking about a security change, for example, somebody needs to change their password, or they need to download a new app on their mobile device. Who is actually affected? Be really clear about that in your post. What happened, or what is going to happen? Again, make that super clear. When did the event take place, or when will it happen? Where is the impact? So again, we talked about who's going to be affected, but then you could also be broader and say, okay, this is going to affect all users in Singapore or in the United States, for example. Make sure that's really clear in your messaging. Why does the user need to know? Well, if I see that there's a change required, so perhaps a security change is required, why is that important? You can stress that in your messaging. And then how does the user need to act? So what they actually need to do as well, and how do they go about that? If you're wanting to drive your user to download a new app, for example, you might want to include the link in your post as well. So I find that when you're drafting a post, just have this as kind of a mental checklist, go through that and ask yourself those questions. And then I think you'll find that this is pretty helpful, because you'll see, okay, all of my key information is included in my posts when you've looked at this checklist. Another exercise that we love to do, this is particularly useful when you're wanting to drive specific behaviors. So if you're starting a campaign, and that might be a workplace post, for example, define the conversations that you would like to see in the chat before you actually do your campaign. So we talked earlier about how we were super happy that people were able to reach out directly to frontline workers, and that the reaction within the comments was excellent. That is something that we could have defined in advance of that, right? So actually take time before your campaigns, before you draft your posts, to actually define the conversations you want to see. And then what you'll find is that will actually drive the way that you write your posts too. Okay, and that will make the whole process for you a lot clearer in terms of planning. And then again, I mentioned Canva, which is a third-party tool, and another third-party tool that I love using is Answer the Public. And this is based on search data. And why is this important as part of drafting your posts? Let's imagine you're working on a project related to Microsoft Teams or any other software tool for that matter. One question you might ask yourself is, what are people really wanting to know around this product, this product or this tool or this platform? Answer the Public allows you to go in and make searches based on search data. So for example, if I type in Microsoft Teams, it then throws up all of these questions. So things like things starting with how, things starting with will. So how Microsoft Teams status work, how Microsoft Teams attendance works. You can anticipate the needs of your end user by using this tool and actually incorporate that into your content scheduling. Okay, so if you're doing a campaign that consists of 5 or 10 posts, answer those questions in advance, and then that's going to be helping to meet your end user needs. Okay. And then finally, we have a communication checklist which you can use if you wish. We've broken it up into 3 pillars: so general, workplace, and email. But they might be transferable to your tools as well. So if you're using Yammer, obviously the middle column might also be relevant to Yammer as well. But remember to do the basics, such as running spell check on your content book grammar, using your up-to-date company branding, avoiding acronyms and jargon, all of that good stuff, through to the more specific elements of workplace, for example, where you use a hashtag in your workplace post to be able to track that in Swoop. And also, if you are using things like Google Analytics as well for kind of an added layer of analytics on top of Swoop. Okay, so I'll just leave that with you. That'll be in the deck, and you can feel free to use that at your own leisure. And that's everything from me. I don't know, Kai, if you had any other questions that popped up in the chat.
It's been a wonderful chat there. So I think we are probably at the stage where I'm really keen for this to turn into a more like an open discussion. But just before we do that, of course, we can't stop here without advertising another webinar that we're running. So those of you that just can't get another of these webinars, I do have to show you this one. So we are running this is focused more on most recent research into Microsoft Teams. And many of you will know that if you are using Yammer or Workplace and you also have, whether it's Teams or Slack, sort of inside the enterprise, that there's this, it's like, how do you get the two to work together? So we've done a lot of research into Microsoft Teams. So if you want to learn more about the benchmarking report, the key findings, there's 3 webinars we got coming up. One is for the US, that's the first one on the 23rd of June. This is all in, I guess, in local time. The 23rd of June, the 24th of June, one that's for continental Europe, and one for the aimed at the UK. So if you are interested in going in and have a look, you're more than welcome to, and you can find them on our website. And if you put your camera up in front of if I hide myself a little bit, you scan up there, then you can register for the webinar. So I'm getting a stiff neck by ducking here, so I'm going to take myself out of screen sharing mode. All right, well, I would like to, on behalf of Swoop Analytics and all the attendees here, to say a big and a great thank you to Ryan for volunteering your time to help us all out here today. Really, really appreciate it. If you're interested in having a closer look at Swoop Analytics, and so you can see some of the benefits we're bringing to companies like Nestle, you're more than welcome to reach out directly to myself or to Jeff for a free trial. Just head over to our website, www.swoopanalytics.com, and then get in contact with us. Or otherwise, we will see you out on the big internet, because I don't think it'll be face-to-face anytime soon. So thank you very much for coming along. Have a wonderful day and a safe day as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much.